Hey folks, this is Kalani. The profession system is getting a massive overhaul in Dragonflight, which means there's a lot of potential for making a whole boatload of gold with professions, especially early on. But with so many changes, which professions are looking good, which require too much effort? Well, that's going to depend on what you want to do and how you want to approach professions this time around. Do you want to become the best blacksmith or the best jewel crafter on your entire realm? Do you want to corner a specific market and swim in a gold bath for the entirety of Dragonflight? Or do you just want to make as much gold as you possibly can with as little effort or thought as possible? Well, that's the goal of today's video, to go through what each profession brings to the table, how much effort you'd have to put in, and ultimately answer the question, what is the best profession for some easy gold in Dragonflight? Now this turned into a bit of a long one due to how many changes we're getting for professions and just how crazy the entire system is now. It ended up being very information dense and pretty long, so I'll be sure to give you some handy dandy timestamps so you can skip around to the parts that you're interested in the most. But I do think it's all worthwhile information because a lot of the professions are very interlinked, so you're sure to learn something from every part no matter what. But before we jump in, be sure to hit up that like button and subscribe so you never miss another video. So as we head into Dragonflight, professions are going to be very different, and understanding some of these key changes will allow you to make so much more gold. To start with, we have a few different distinct progression paths for you to work through. The first is the good old leveling up that we've always had in WoW. Make recipes, get skill ups, learn new recipes, get more skill ups, and eventually cap out. That remains more or less the same. You can go up to skill 100 in any profession. What is different this time around is that for any crafting profession, skill level 50 is where you can learn almost anything in the expansion. So you don't have to get to 100 to learn every recipe, but therein lies our second change. As you skill up, you become better at your profession. Quite literally, it's not just new recipes, it's better results. Dragonflight introduces the quality mechanic, and the higher the quality of your items, the better the results will be. You can make higher item level gear, more potent potions, even better gems to slot into your gear. Quality is going to be very important in Dragonflight, and your skill translates directly into quality. The higher your skill, the higher quality stuff you can make. For gatherers, the higher your skill, the higher quality of raw materials you can gather, and higher quality raw materials also increase the quality of any crafted good, so they're going to be very important as well. So, quality is king, which means you will want to cap out your profession skill as quickly as you can. The next progression path is profession knowledge and specializations. You can earn knowledge from a variety of places. For crafters, it primarily comes from crafting new recipes for the first time. That's going to be a huge chunk of your upfront knowledge. And then for gatherers, it's more RNG based, where you have a chance to get knowledge anytime you gather. But it's actually so much more than that. There are quests for all types of professions which also reward knowledge, and there are even secrets hidden in the world. Things like books you can find and read, and scribes can create special tomes that can be read once per week. So there are a lot of sources of knowledge, but where you spend it is the real key. For every 25 points you level up in your profession, you can learn a specialization. These specs deal with the multiple facets of your given profession. You can focus on crafting certain items or types of crafts to give you a boost or an edge in that area of your craft. All in all, pretty much every point you spend in a specialization is going to increase the quality of a certain type of item you can craft, so it leads very well into that system as well. But specializations and knowledge is also where you find most endgame recipes. You have to learn specific nodes and put enough points into them to earn those recipes, so where you spend your knowledge dictates what you can craft and how well you can craft it. And then the third progression path is special profession gear. This will provide you with profession stats to increase your overall crafting potential. The better profession gear you have, the more stats you're going to get, and the better your crafts will end up being. That gives you a very quick general picture of how professions work in Dragonflight. So with all of that crammed together, you end up with some massive potential in professions for the Dragonflight expansion. But the real key here is investment. Time investment, gold investment, research investment. The longer you spend on a profession, the better your results will be. I'm not saying this to insinuate you have to know life the endgame to make any gold with professions. My main point is that you don't want to be swapping professions too often, because you you'll lose all that progress and have to start again. If you stick with a profession, you can end up in a place where you can make a whole boatload of gold and provide very useful services for yourself, your alts, your friends, and your guild. So, how does this translate into each profession and how profitable they could end up being? Let's start by talking about gathering first, because the potential here is staggering. For mining, we have 3 ores to collect. Ceravite ore is the base common ore and can be found in any Ceravite mining node. Draconium is the rarer ore this time that also has its own nodes, so you'll find less nodes when compared to Ceravite, which means this will probably be a bit annoying to collect. And then the rarest ore is Casgarite ore, which can only be occasionally found while mining other ores, so that one is complete luck and RNG. You will also find elemental or empowered nodes in your mining adventures. These nodes always contain some of the new elemental crafting reagent in Dragonflight, rousing elements. These can be turned into awakened elements, and they're going to be very useful in crafting in general, and you can get them from a variety of sources, like just killing the elementals throughout the Dragon Isles, but miners get some extra chances to gather these materials, which is a very nice bonus. With mining, you can specialize into mining process, which basically boosts your mining stats in every way, leading to faster mining, more rare materials, extra materials like gems directly from mining, as well as just getting more materials from your gathering nodes. There's even an unlock which lets you mine while mounted, which is going to be very fun indeed. You can go into metallurgy. This is all about quality. You can work directly towards mining higher quality ores and metals, as well as learn to refine them into higher quality materials as well. And then the last spec is Mastering the Elements, which focuses on gaining the absolute maximum bonus from any elemental nodes you encounter, and it lets you gather way more rousing materials from gathering nodes. It also unlocks the Overload ability, which gives you very specific bonuses from different types of empowered nodes, which will be very useful. Mining will probably be very good gold this time around because it will fuel all sorts of recipes and crafts. You have the obvious ones like blacksmithing and jewelcrafting, both of which are looking to be great professions in general, so that will increase the value of ores, but they're also used in a wide variety of recipes across multiple other professions. They're really trying to make sure everyone works together this time, so ores are going to be more useful than in previous expansion, and those added elemental materials are just going to add to your overall gold making potential. If you really stick with mining and work through the specializations, you'll be gathering a bunch of high quality materials, you'll be able to mine while mounted, speeding everything up considerably, you'll have access to a lot of rousing materials, which will be very important, and you can even gather gems directly, as well as very rare gems which jewel crafters are going to want. Moving on, herbalism is shaping up to be great too. We have 4 herbs to collect: Hokum Bloom, Saxifrage, Bubble Poppy, and Wraith Bark. You can find each of them in a wide variety of areas, so you'll be hunting all over the Dragon Isles for these herbs. You can also find empowered or elemental herbalism nodes, just like with mining, but there's a few types of elements that miners have and herbalists don't, and vice versa. So even though they will both be gathering extra rousing materials, each profession will actually be gathering different elements with a bit of overlap. Another special little minigame that herbalists have access to is seed planting. While gathering herbs, you will sometimes receive seeds that you can plant in rich soil. Rich soil tends to be found where the dragonflights are more focused, and if you find one of these patches, you can plant a seed and a herb will grow immediately that you can pick. It's basically just a free node whenever you have an available seed and find a patch of soil, which is really cool. You can specialize into bountiful harvests, which works on increasing your overall yield of every herb node you gather, as well as learning how to refine herbs into higher quality materials. Botany focuses on increasing your efficiency while gathering and opening up different sources of gathering. You can learn to gather from herb-related monsters and even gather rousing materials from their corpses, and there's also a section that focuses entirely on that seed minigame, giving you more seeds more often and different seeds that produce different outcomes, including elemental herbs and rousing materials, so that sounds really cool too. And then the last one is Mastering the Elements, which is very much the same vein as the mining specialization. You learn to overload elemental nodes for extra effects and gather more rousing materials from every elemental type. Herbs are going to be very useful once again. They will fuel alchemy potions and inscription inks, as well as various miscellaneous recipes across a lot of other professions. The higher the quality your herbs, the better those crafts, especially potions, are going to be, so it's going to be a great easy gold maker once again, especially when you take into account the rousing material farming potential. If you heavily invest into the specialization system, you'll be gathering a whole bunch of high quality herbs, a lot of rousing materials, and you'll be able to create your own powerful herb nodes. And then skinning is kind of the same thing it always has been, but with a lot of extra rare materials this time around. We have a regular leather, a rare leather, a regular scale, and a rare scale to skin. Those are the baseline materials, but then there are also 8 different species-specific items that you can get. Each of these items comes from a very specific skinning target. So, flawless proto-dragon scales are only going to come from skinning proto-dragons. Each item specifically states what you would have to skin to get that item, and they are rare. So these are going to be very valuable early on, and knowing the best locations to farm each might make you a whole boatload of gold. Skinners can specialize into tanning, which increases your overall efficiency when gathering the base materials of both leather and scales. Harvesting focuses on gathering those species-specific rare materials we were just talking about, as well as gathering meat for cooking and collecting items to craft new fishing lures to increase your fishing efficiency. And then Bait Crafter is a bit unusual, but could be very useful. You learn how to craft bait, and specializing lets you craft different kinds of bait traps. These traps are another little profession minigame where you set the bait down, and after a little while, an elusive creature will spawn for you to kill and skin. These creatures can have better skinning loot, and if you use special bait, you can get special rewards. So if you invest your time into skinning, you'll basically just have access to everything more often. More leather, more scales, better qualities of both, more rare materials, and maybe most importantly, you'll get more species-specific crafting materials, which are going to be the key for lots of higher-end recipes. Skinning by itself should make some very good gold, but it would pair even better with a leatherworker in my opinion. So as you can see, the more time and effort you put into a gathering profession, the more you're going to get out of it. Higher quality materials, easier access to materials, higher chance of obtaining rare materials, and that's the stuff that will provide the most gold. People will fork over a whole bunch of gold for higher quality mats because that's what will allow them to craft higher quality stuff and in turn charge more for their crafts or just get that better result. Rare materials are also used in every high-end recipe, in some cases to a crazy degree, so getting those more often will net you more gold as well. And then on top of that, both mining and herbing have great access to the elemental crafting reagents from empowered nodes. They are also extensively used in crafting and will be very valuable, so all in all, gathering professions look like a great choice for easy gold in Dragonflight. A quick note on specializations and knowledge: you will eventually be able to learn and unlock every single point in each specialization tree for your entire profession. You can get it all, but it's going to take time. Knowledge will be heavily time-gated in a variety of ways, so the longer you spend on a profession, the more knowledge you'll get and the more specialization unlocks you will have. Now, the same kind of time investment can be made into crafting, but you end up with different results depending on the profession you want to invest in. For any profession that deals with crafting, this will translate into more recipes and higher quality crafted gear. So tailors, leatherworkers and blacksmiths, the more knowledge you earn, the more you can specialize. In these specialization nodes, you will earn the higher tiers of crafting recipes, so that's where a lot of the top tier stuff is going to be. As you specialize, you also get more skill points, which translates into higher quality gear. So if you put in the time, you could end up making the very best gear available, which means you can charge a huge premium either from crafting orders or just on the auction house. For blacksmiths, they'll be able to make all sorts of weapons, almost everything actually. The only things they can't craft are ranged weapons and then magic weapons like staffs and wands and stuff, but they have every melee weapon as well as shields, so they'll have a wide audience in terms of weapon sales. They will also be crafting plate armor, as you might expect, which will be great alongside weapon crafting. They have special alloys for use in blacksmithing, but also for some other professions too, and there are a few extra bits and bobs like repair hammers and sharpening stones. Blacksmiths also have a lot of profession gear recipes. They can make a lot of tools and even some accessories, so that's something to look into early on in Dragonflight. They can specialize into making better plate armor, making better weapons, making better miscellaneous blacksmithing items, or just generally improving their skill level. For leatherworkers, they'll be making both leather and mail armor that immediately gives them a huge audience to craft gear for, including the new evoker class, so that's going to be great. They also have special elemental patterns, which is basically just special crafted gear. All of this gear comes with special effects, but those effects do count as embellishments, and you can only have 2 embellishments on your gear at any one time. So these effects have to be really, really good to take up one of those 2 slots. What's interesting is that there are even little set bonuses here, so this gear could be quite good in general. They can also make special leatherworking reagents, some finishing materials, armor kits for leg enchants, as well as 1 or 2 ranged weapons for the hunters. Leatherworkers also get a lot of profession gear recipes, almost as many as blacksmiths, so that's another great early gold making option. They can specialize into general improvements to their crafting, making better leather armor, making better mail armor, those two are separate, or making better elemental recipes. For tailors, you'll be making cloth armor. Shock, I know. There are quite a variety of vestments you can make, including special armor just like leatherworking, as well as some set bonuses, so that's neat. There are special tailor-only upgrading bolts and crafting materials, and then they can also make spell thread leg enchants. And then as a cool little bonus, tailors will also get some new bag recipes, including recipes for the brand new reagent bag in Dragonflight. I think this is the only source of 36 slot reagent bags so far, so that should be a great money maker early on too. And then tailors also get quite a few profession gear recipes, so chances are if what you need aren't made by blacksmiths or leatherworkers, maybe it's probably in tailoring somewhere. They can also specialize in Tailoring Mastery, which focuses on being more resourceful, using less materials, gathering more materials, and just being a better tailor. Textiles focuses on breaking down cloth and spinning it together to make the best materials you can, which helps you get those higher quality crafts. Draconic Needlework is where you work on those special sets, one side for the blue Dragonflight and one side for the bronze Dragonflight, so that's its own specialization. And then garment crafting is all about general cloth armor crafting, as well as the profession garments crafting to make those better than ever before. Now for jewel crafting specifically, we have some very interesting items and options. There are a whole bunch of different types of gems and gem cuts. Air gems, earth gems, fire gems, frost gems, and primalist gems. They each do slightly different things, and you'll need to specialize differently to improve your craft of each. Gems also have quality ranks, and the higher your quality, the more stats the gem will offer, so the more gold people will pay for them. They can also craft jewelry, rings and necklaces. All of the rings and necks come with a socket for free, as you would expect, but the necklaces are very interesting. They have special effects that interact with your socketed gems, providing powerful effects. Jewel crafters can also craft some very interesting trinkets that directly interact with your socketed gems in the same kind of way, which is really cool. Not only does that give you huge potential benefits, but it also encourages you to think about what gems you slot, and it fits into the jewel crafting theme perfectly. And then they also have a bunch of random stuff like battle pets, novelty items, extravagant glassware, reagents for other professions, as well as empty soul cages. We'll learn more about this when we get to engineers, but remember that to capture souls, you will need an empty soul cage from jewel crafters. And then like many other professions, they also have quite a few profession gear recipes, so really everyone is going to need to figure out exactly where their items come from, because they kinda come from everywhere. But perhaps the most interesting item for jewel crafters is the tiered medallion setting. This item allows you to add one socket up to a maximum of 3 sockets to any neck piece. So you can get 3 sockets on your neck from these items, but there's a catch. You can only add 1 socket per quality level of the medallion. So to add that 3rd socket, you will need a quality 3 medallion, which will take a lot of jewel crafting skill and a lot of specialization in the right place, which means it will be rare, especially early on, which means it will be expensive. This could make jewel crafters a lot of gold early on as people gear up and race for every little min-max opportunity they can. Jewel crafters can specialize into Jeweler's Toolset Mastery, which focuses on general improvements and being more efficient with materials. Faceting is all about cutting the very best gems possible, with a lot of different recipes being locked behind this specialization. Setting focuses on crafted gear like rings, necklaces, trinkets, and even little statues to provide you with extra bonuses. And then enterprising focuses on prospecting gems, crafting optional reagents, and finishing materials, as well as profession gear. For alchemy, it's very much the same thing as it usually is, lots of potions with different effects that you get to sell to all the raiders and PvPers and dungeoneers on reset day. They're split up into different elements this time, but ultimately it all comes down to how good a potion is. The better the potion and the more classes and specs that use it, the more gold people will spend on it. With quality in mind, that also means the higher quality you can make the best potions, the more you can charge for them, so that's going to be a big deal in Dragonflight. Now, instead of flasks, we have vials. These are pretty much just a flask, though. They last for 30 minutes and have persistent effects. They might not be called a flask, but it's basically just a flask. Some of these seem quite powerful, but at the end of the day, it's just another consumable to sell to anybody who will buy it. You can make cauldrons again, but that's not really going to be relevant for making gold, but it will be nice for your group content. Now you do get some transmutes to tinker about with. You're mainly focusing on changing elemental reagents around so you can combine them or straight up exchange them, but whether that's good for gold will just depend on rousing and awakened elemental prices and whether you can buy a cheap one to turn it into an expensive one. They can also make their special alchemist stone trinkets, and this time they directly interact with potions and vials, which leans more into that alchemist fantasy, so that's really cool. Other than that, nothing too exciting on the alchemy front. Alchemists can specialize in potion mastery, which strangely focuses on making really good potions. Then vial mastery is the same thing, but for your vial effects. And then the last one is alchemical theory, which seems to deal with everything else left in your profession. It's a big general pool of bonuses. Moving on, Inscription is also going to have some new toys to play with. We have missives that let you decide on secondary stats, but they're going to interact with the quality feature in an interesting way. When you add a missive to a craft, it increases the difficulty, which could lower the quality of the resulting item. The interesting part is that the higher quality your missive that you put into a craft, the less that will increase the difficulty. So higher tier missives will let you choose stats without as much of a negative feedback. There are also missives for profession tools to let you pick those stats, which is a very nice option. And then they also have dragon riding customization options they can craft, which could end up being very valuable if the actual options are interesting or cool. Everyone is going to want their mount to stand out, seeing as everybody's riding around on the same floor, so they'd probably pay good gold for some of those extra options. Another potentially great gold-making option are these new profession knowledge books. These books can be used once per week to gain one profession knowledge, and there are books for every profession. So I guess the question is, how much is one knowledge per week worth to all of the crafters out there? With knowledge dictating profession progression and potential gold-making, I would say they're going to be worth quite a lot, especially early on. But the most interesting thing to me here is the Dark Moon cards and their decks. Not only do we have another round of Dark Moon card trinkets, which are typically quite powerful, but there's also the option to upgrade them and improve them. You can turn a deck into a box, which is a crafting recipe, so it also benefits from every additional crafting feature like quality and item level upgrades, so they are going to stay relevant for way longer. There's also this Dark Moon Sigil option, which lets you control how your Dark Moon deck shuffles, which could make them even more powerful because you then remove that random factor of the shuffling bonus. That's very interesting indeed. Then we also have contracts for extra rep gains, Vantus runes, they can craft some staffs and offhands, and then there are profession tool recipes as well, most notably for alchemists and scribes. You can specialize into Rune Mastery, which is a bunch of general bonuses to your overall effectiveness. Archiving deals with the Dark Moon cards, their respective decks, the new trinket boxes, as well as missives and contracts. And then Rune Binding will improve your profession tools, weapons, codexes, and Vantus rune crafts in various ways. Enchanting is more of the same for the most part, but everyone is going to need enchants, so you're going to make some gold no matter what, I guess. There are cloak enchants, chest enchants, bracer enchants, boots, rings, weapons, and profession tool enchants, so a good spread this time around with a good variety of uses. They can also make rods and wands, so that could be good money makers for some of the casters, and then they have a lot of illusion recipes. These are more interesting, especially for collection purposes, but they're probably going to be less lucrative in terms of gold making. For the most part, enchanting will likely be a solid, consistent gold maker as it usually is, but nothing super duper exciting or interesting this time around. They can specialize into making better enchants, you can find special disenchantable treasures that will yield extra materials, and then the last one focuses on weapon crafts and general profession improvements. Now, engineering is an interesting profession this time around. They get to craft their own goggles as per usual, but then they also have special tinker sockets to play with. These tinkers are what you would expect from the typical engineering special effects: flamethrowers, invisibility, battle res. We've seen most of these before, but instead of being like an enchant where you put on your boots or your belt or whatever, they are now sockets, so you can pop one of these into your goggles to get your special engineering effects back. But where this gets interesting, especially from a gold making perspective, is that while the goggles are engineering only, you would need to be an engineer to use those goggles, there are also bracer crafts for every armor type that also include that tinker socket, and these bracers are not engineering specific, so they can be made via a work order, which means anyone can have one tinker socket on their gear with these bracers, so that could end up being quite the little moneymaker and be quite powerful for other players. The other major area for engineering is going to be their various devices. Most of these are going to be engineer only, like the new wormhole generator, and there are plenty of fun toys for single-time purchases which could make some good gold, but what I'm very interested in here is the Zap Throttle Soul Inhaler. This is what I was talking about when we mentioned the soul cages from Jewelcrafting. These soul inhalers can be used on elementals in the Dragon Isles to suck out their soul. You can then use that in crafting or break it down into elemental reagents. That sounds like something everybody is going to want, so engineers will be able to sell the soul inhalers, but I think Jewelcrafting kind of wins in this transaction because they get the resale value. I'm guessing the soul inhaler doesn't break, but you need a soul cage for every time you try to suck out a soul, so that's going to give Jewelcrafters a lot of business probably, but engineers should still make some good gold off the Zap throttles, especially early on. And then they also have a lot of profession gear crafts for a variety of other professions, lots of parts and optional reagents, finishing materials, a couple of ranged weapons, lots of explosives that might or might not be useful, as well as scopes and ammo for all the hunters out there. Engineers can specialize in optimized efficiency, which just generally improves everything they can do. Explosives is pretty self-explanatory. You want to make things go boom better? This is where you do that. Function over form improves gear crafting, profession tools, and extra things like ammunition. And then mechanical mind is all about your gadgets and gizmos, and this is where you'll find a lot of those recipes. So, as you can see from these quick notes, a lot of Dragonflight professions kind of work together. Everyone makes each other's profession gear for a start, but there are a lot of crafting items made by someone else that you might need, and on top of that there are special optional crafting items that can give you a huge boost, as well as those finishing materials which everybody's going to use later on. But once again, they're typically made by other crafters, so you probably can't do everything yourself unless you want to spend a lot of time on professions with your alts as well, which could be worthwhile, especially if you love crafting and gathering and professions in general, but that's going to be completely up to you. Another massive feature that will play into gold making for professions is the crafting order or work order system. I've made a separate video covering this in more detail, so I'll link that in the comments or description below. So if you really want to dive into what this system does and its true potential, I would recommend you pop on over there. But as a quick overview, you can place orders for items to be crafted for you. So if you want mail gear but don't want to be a leatherworker, you can set up an order for the exact piece of gear you want, provide all of the required materials as well as a gold commission to entice the crafters to make it for you, and wait for a leatherworker to fill your order. So you can benefit from someone else's higher crafting potential, or on the flip side, you can use the crafting order system to make a whole lot of gold. Checking the crafting order page as a crafter is very easy. You just need to be near a profession table. There's a tab on your crafting window that says crafting orders. Click on that and you can see what orders are available to fill. These were recently changed so that every crafting order will have to provide all basic reagents, which makes it easy to see if a craft is worth taking. If you branch out very quickly with your specialization and knowledge to obtain new recipes, you can fulfill more orders faster. So I don't necessarily think the right call is to jam everything you have into one very tiny niche. I think the better play will be to focus on new recipes first and foremost, mostly because of this crafting order feature. The more recipes you have, the more orders you can fulfill, and early on there won't be very many players with each endgame recipe, so there's a lot of potential here on both sides of the crafting mirror, but ultimately you could make a lot of gold just by filling in work orders as long as you have all the recipes you need. And remember, this isn't just bind on equip or tradable gear that can be ordered. You can order almost anything. Epic gear, bind on pickup gear, profession tools and accessories, those shiny engineer braces or Jewelcrafting necklaces. As long as it doesn't have a profession restriction and you can place an order in the crafting order page, you can have that item crafted for you. All you have to do is gather the necessary materials. And then one last major note here, whenever we consider crafting gear especially, you have to remember that Dragonflight introduces a way to increase the item level of your craft in multiple ways. First, you have the quality of an item. The higher the quality, the higher the item level will be, but then we also have optional crafting reagents that increase item level massively. You can earn some of these from world quests, maybe dungeons, but they're also in the raid too. You can get items that increase the item level of a piece of gear to match that of mythic raid gear, so you can can craft mythic raid equivalent gear. This stuff isn't going to become obsolete within a week or two like it usually does. Profession crafted gear can be on par with some of the best gear available, so if the gear has special effects, unique interactions, or just any kind of bonus that would set it apart from other gear, that could actually be an amazing piece of gear for everyone, even mythic raiders. So that could earn you a lot of gold if you specialize into the right areas and can craft those pieces with the highest item level. Crafted gear isn't just for the start of an expansion anymore, so your time investment will not be wasted. Alright, let's wrap this up with some suggestions, shall we? If all you want is easy gold, not too much thought, not too much effort, pick up mining and herbalism. These two gathering professions have access to so many materials, and the higher quality and rarer materials will be a gold mine early on. Getting more elemental reagents is just icing on the cake, and with dragon riding in the new expansion, you aren't even running around to start with, you're flying right from the get-go. There are also various specialization options and other progression paths that let you super streamline your gathering, so I think gathering will be very profitable but also really fun. For the crafting professions, a few stick out very clearly. To start with, blacksmithing has access to a whole bunch of profession gear recipes. They make stuff for almost every other profession, and I think profession gear will be very easy gold very early on in the expansion. In addition to that, they also make weapons for almost everyone, and weapons have always been one of the most important pieces of gear for a lot of classes, melee classes especially, so there's going to be huge value there. They also have the plate armor stacked on top, so that's a nice bonus. Now, leatherworking is also one to keep an eye on. They have a lot of different profession gear recipes as well, so that's some great early gold potential, but then they also craft both leather and mail armor, and they have more powerful variants of those armor pieces with special effects. That's interesting, but the simple fact of being able to craft both leather and mail gear is huge. For starters, that gives them the widest customer base out of any other armor crafter. In addition to that, the new Evoker class wears mail armor, and trust me when I say there are going to be a lot of Evokers out there. If you aren't playing it as your main, chances are you'll play it as an alt, so leatherworking could end up being huge. With how gathering works this time around, I would also encourage you to take skinning if you want to do leatherworking, otherwise you'll be paying a lot of gold for those specific species and rare materials early on. And then my last pick would have to be Jewelcrafting. Between the higher stats on cut gems, the special jewelry and trinkets that you can make, and the medallion neck socket item, there's just a huge amount of potential for gold making here. The first players to get that high quality craft of the medallion item are going to be rich. I have zero doubts about that. So you can't go wrong with gathering, double gathering, mining and herbalism, blacksmithing, leatherworking or jewelcrafting in my opinion. Those will be big money makers for sure. But that's how each profession works in Dragonflight, how they could each make gold, and what the best professions for some easy gold will be in our opinion. What do you think of the big profession overhaul, and do you have a plan of which professions you're going to take or how you're going to make some gold? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and to all of our members here on YouTube. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you'd like to add your name to the end of every video with a special shout out at the start of the next video, you can find links in the description over to Patreon, or click the join button just below this video. And if you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss another video. Thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.